Sorry, the clock slipped around without me realising it. So just standing with your feet hip width apart, get rid of that so I don't bump into it. Toes pointing forwards as much as possible. And you'll weight a little bit forwards, hips just dropping back. Now feeling once again of just simply allowing yourself to rest downwards. We call it sitting. We sit into our hips. And like sitting into an armchair or something like that, there's a quality of what we might call letting go. And obviously that takes a while to build, and I think at the start of each session you have to sort of remind yourself. It's like when you sit in your chair, you might kind of shuffle around and arrange a few cushions and things like that. This is a great exercise for doing that, because you've got the constant movement, very simple, just swinging gently from your hips. And your awareness of the movement around the center of your body, which gradually builds, is an indication, just as if when you shuffle around in the chair, you finally get there kind of thing, then eventually you'll kind of get here. So we start off with this nice loose feeling, roughly speaking, and it's not all about technical detail, but you can see my knees are above the balls of my feet, but my hips are more or less above my ankles. I don't think we should go around with a tape measure or anything like that, but it's worth keeping that sense of a precision in the back of your mind as one of the things that we focus on. I think any kind of meditational art requires a degree of discipline, whether you're focusing on your breath or your posture or your movement or an object or whatever. And in Tai Chi, the obvious thing to focus on, or one of the obvious things to focus on, is the correct posture, the correct movement, alignment of your body, center of gravity sinking. And the reason why it's so important is that it has this dual quality about it. It's a training for our mind, as I've just pointed out. This awareness of detail helps to anchor our attention. But it is, of course, also something that is good for our body, because in the process of doing this, we start to gradually change, and so we improve our posture. Those changes are very gradual. So both, it's why I always spend a few minutes with this in these sessions, because it takes a while to settle in. But also, when we start doing Tai Chi, we may notice, oh, this is out of line or whatever. The changes should be made carefully, respectfully, nothing forced, and patiently, because sometimes it might just take a little bit longer. It's not just a case of getting the hips in the right place. If it doesn't feel comfortable, then you'll be putting strain on the rest of your body. And just raising your arms. And again, we can come back to a sense of movement, a looseness in our hips. And not so much with this one, but with the previous one in our shoulders as well. And this remains the starting point, the very important foundation for everything that we begin to develop in Tai Chi. And just let your hands drop down. Rolling your weight forwards and backwards. So if I come a bit closer to begin with, it might be easier for you to see. Imagine your feet are stuck in mud, and if you look down at my ankles, you'll see that the pivot point is in fact my ankles. If I get a stick, so this is a bit difficult to sort out, but when I'm standing here, you can see more or less that line from shoulder to ankle. Should be around about the crown of my head as well. So when I rock forwards and backwards, I try and keep the same sort of proportion. I'm not wanting to do this. See how my head has moved away from that pole, or this, of course, or any one of a number of other variations. So we maintain the awareness of that imaginary line through our body. It doesn't exist in real life, but it's a useful way of just aligning ourselves. Noticing where we begin to lose that, because I'm okay here, I think, but as I go to here, my calf muscles are tightening up, and I can feel my as a consequence, my lower back starting to bend too much. So I'm starting to lose that alignment. And just see if you can notice what is going on in your body. So this takes that element of mind training, the meditative element, to a new sort of detailed level. We're really starting to listen to our body in movement. And in doing so, we notice the movements deeper and deeper in the body. We notice any physical response, tightening the shoulders, whatever, but also the fluidity of the movement itself. So the flow, the energy, whatever label you care to put on it, what moves through the structure. And so we have these three elements, the three treasures of Tai Chi: mind and body, movement, energy, beginning to mingle, to mix. That trained awareness then has a further use when we start to use different images. So now we imagine being in water, hands out to your sides, just angling out from your body a little bit. And because you're in water, as you go forwards, your hands are left behind a bit. I'm exaggerating a little bit here. And then they follow through. And the same thing going back. Notice elbows are soft, wrists, the joints of the fingers are soft, because you can try it. Just fill up a bowl of water and try and move your hands through the water and keeping your hands stiff, and it's much harder work. So we find a way to flow through the resistance. So it's not a big movement with the arms. And as you do this, just allow your attention to, first of all, settle in your feet, but to come up through your body, calves, knees, thighs, into your hips and your pelvis, and lower back and belly, solar plexus, middle part of your back, chest and shoulders, and upper back, down into your arms, just as though you were looking around, just arrived in a place, and you're just having a look around. You're just getting your bearings. So I sometimes think of this as being a sort of survey of the inner landscape of our body. Notice areas where there doesn't seem to be that responsiveness within your body. You don't get a sense of movement or flow. Sometimes when we've built a bit of experience in these arts, the simple act of bringing your attention to those areas can be enough to release them. And this raises another element related to that use of imagery, which is what we call intent in Tai Chi. We intend the movement. We have a function, we have an aim, we have maybe an image for everything that we do. And this reinforces that interconnectedness of mind, body, and energy. See if you can identify the midpoint. So again, using the pole, this time what I'm going to do is, if I arrange the pole, it's a bit tricky to demonstrate because the pole will move, but essentially I move away from the pole, but I maintain the line of the body as I've already described. I'm not doing this. Can you see how my back is bent? So I'm still maintaining this movement, but now the pole stays behind, but I still want to feel that connection to it. If I go too far from it, I will stumble. Same thing, of course, going backwards. I can go back a certain amount. I can feel a pull again in my calves, my shins, my thighs, but it's still quite comfortable. I might be able to just let my hips sink down just a little bit, but then if I go a bit further, it becomes impossible. So not only am I aware of this movement of that line, but I'm also aware that I leave it behind, but I maintain a connection with it. And moving that forwards to just behind the balls of the feet. I mean, you can have these lines anyway. You could have one there, one there, one there. You could have them different parts of the body. So you essentially form a three-dimensional grid in your mind. And what we want to do is to find the point where everything settles. I could, in theory, if the floor were absolutely level, which it probably is, and if the end of the pole were accurately leveled off, I could probably just let go of it, and with a bit of luck, it would stay. As you can see, it's not quite so easy. So if I really wanted this pole to remain upright, an ideal way of doing it would be to put bits of string, like guy ropes in a tent, splayed out around, and then get them equal, pulling equal, so that it was held by those guy ropes. And that's what we use our muscles for: muscle, tendon, ligament, and other tissue as well, like the fascia. No one side, no one part of that process overused as we come to the middle, this point of central equilibrium. So this is the next foundation. Once we've started to just loosen up in the body, we use the image of moving through water and this sense of alignment to go beyond just simply looseness, but to introduce a quality in both our body and in the flow of energy that's a little bit stronger. Now, listen to your weight just drop back a little bit and push up. So as we go down, an adjustment comes here in the middle of the body. I keep going back to this, I should just leave it out, shouldn't I? So here, if I sink down and I'm tight in my lower back and my pelvis can't tuck under, that's what happens. If as I sink, if my hips sink back, my pelvis can tuck under, then I come back to this line. So don't try and adjust your pelvis. It's usually far too subtle process. You just have to allow your body to do it. Bring the hands around as though you're cradling the ball and pushing up and sinking down. So one of the things you want to focus on now, one of the key things here is there anything stopping this gentle movement of the pelvis from just tucking under? Is there a tightness in your back? Are you pulling on your belly? Are you tight in your hips? All of these things will prevent the pelvis from finding its alignment. The other thing to bear in mind is that those movements of the pelvis can be easily lost, particularly as we grow older, but also when we're younger. The pelvic floor becomes a key thing for many people in different circumstances. It's not just about strengthening the pelvic floor, it's about making sure that muscles and nerves can work together to make these very, very fine adjustments, which in theory your body's very good at it, but there may be things getting in the way. And so again, we bring our intent to that, awareness to those areas. You may want to shuffle around with the posture a little bit. You may want to think about, are you using the shoulders too much, and so on and so forth. There's all sorts of things. Or it may just be that you need to wait a little bit, and as your body adjusts, that blockage will just dissolve away. Maybe a different exercise will help. So this time, change into the wild goose. So hopefully by now, your experience in these arts, you're starting to get a sense of, the posture's starting to come. It takes a few minutes for most of us, I think, most of the time, as does the settling in, the quietening of your attention. That's very much part of the process. Some meditation traditions have what they call mandalas. I'm sure you've seen them, but they're quite often circular paintings, diagrams. And one of the functions of a mandala like that can be that by studying the mandala and studying greater and greater detail, your attention gets deeper and deeper into a sense of calmness and awareness. And in that sense, you could argue that these exercises are themselves functioning as a mandala might function for our mind. And then letting your hands cross in front of your belly, parting the clouds. Part of that mandala is an awareness that what's happening in your feet is always connected to what's happening in your fingertips, and vice versa. I believe the term mandala originally didn't just refer to these paintings, but to lots of different kind of meditational devices. But I may not be correct in that. It's not something that I've looked that closely at. But I know people talk about mandalas sometimes in contexts other than sort of circular paintings. One more time. For me, one of the great things about using Tai Chi like this, just as we change now to Dragon plucks the stars from the sky, we feel the change within the body. And it's not, on quite a regular basis, something very familiar like that change can suddenly take on a whole new aspect. That even though from the outside we're doing the same thing, that I do this virtually every day, one way or another. It's like going out into your garden every day. Things change, new factors come in, old factors get lost. So every now and then we find a new aspect to that in a landscape, or sometimes we find that a previous aspect to that in a landscape is no longer significant. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Extending out. And whether you're actively dropping your hip or not, I am at the moment. What we're looking for is this movement, pushing the elbow up initially. And then that same movement, pulling the elbow down. If you want to feel that in a slightly more subtle way, then the thing to do is to start off with the bigger movement, so you're still sinking down and pushing up, and gradually make that smaller, but see if you can retain at least some of the sensations that you get when you were doing it. And this is again a use of intent. So what I might do, for instance, is imagine that I'm standing on one end of a big elastic band, and as I push up, I'm extending out that elastic band, and I just notice the sensations in my side, maybe the side of my leg as well. And then as I make those physical movements smaller, I try and remember that sensation. Try and imagine that sensation still taking place. So again, this adds an element to this quality of intent, but it becomes a very, very subtle process. This is not mind over matter. We're not trying to force our body to do anything that doesn't come naturally to it. What we've done is we've noticed what's going on in the body, and we've chosen various things to focus our attention on, to focus our intent on. We haven't suddenly decided that we should hang upside down from our ankles or something like that. One more time on each side. So as you notice more about what's going on in this ever-changing in a landscape, so in the end, the way that you do the movements will change. So now changing to pushing in 4 directions. And starting by your hips sinking back still. So as you push up, you feel sort of lengthening through your back. And then slowly down. How we experience that maybe very personal. I feel it was almost a kind of tingling. And then you lift, but now you push out sideways and you feel the broadening of your back, and you turn in your hips. And then once again, you come back. The same thing on the other side. As you push out through the palms of your hands, imagine pushing through water. And when you get to here, don't go too far. If I go any further, can you see how I'm leaning back? And then back here, and then pushing out to the sides. So if I had a third hand, I would hold the pole that I had before in an appropriate position. Perhaps give you the visual image of turning around the pole, but I think that would just be a stage of coordination too much. I'm sure you can use your imagination. Imagine that center line of your body, that central axis of your body. Just feel that you're able to turn, remembering that very loose feeling that we had at the beginning of the class. still very aware of what's going on as you extend out in particular, because those are the movements where you're more likely to create a stiffening, a tightening. Changing after this one, circling palms. The more I think about this, the more I'm moving away from the idea of lifting this hand. What I want to do is to imagine the expansion through the side of my body, pushing my hand out. And what will happen is my arm will just come up nice and smoothly. And it feels much more gentle on my shoulder than if I think about moving my hand. How we approach a movement, any movement, turning a tap on, whatever, influences how we make that movement. So it's important that we really do feel that mind and body are interacting. And that any imagery that we use is appropriate. Now then, just add in the turn if it's comfortable. Excuse me. And then switching sides. Realizing that what you did on the first side might be slightly different on this side. And then, if comfortable, you add the turn. Okay, now, as I demonstrated before, if I to bend my back, I can begin to fall forwards. But if I push my hips back, then I can remain fairly stable. It's not the most comfortable position, but it is a fairly stable position. So for rowing a boat in the middle of the lake, start by sinking down, your hips going back, and then let your pelvis tuck under again, and push up. Your hands follow and over. So keep doing that. If you can, just watch the screen. See what I do here is I go to here, and then I actually let my hips drop down. I come back to what is hopefully in line again, and then I push up. What I don't do is get to here and try and sort of pull myself up like this. You can see, well, that's tilting, but everything's starting to go wrong at that point. So nice and easy. Feeling how just that awareness of the pull of gravity on your hips and your buttocks, and a willingness to yield to that pull of gravity is really all you need to bring yourself gently to the upright position. All that's being equal, I mean, you may find a certain, maybe something, again, something in your back is stiffening up, can't quite feel the connection from hips to shoulders, that kind of thing. Do one more. And this time, when you come to the upright position, hands palm down in front of your belly, turn, and then once again, push your hips back and drop down. Come back to the center, polishing the table. One more time. And just stand for a moment. Check out. Those last 4 movements really draw our attention to the center of the body. When I turn in one direction, I rotate, and again, what I'm looking to be able to do, I don't know if this will work, but I'm rotating around that center line of the body. Then I simply think about hips and waist, think about this central axis, and I turn horizontally. I can turn to face that way, I can turn to face that way, or if it was my back would be going that way and that way. It's a rotation, like a wheel turning around. It's hum. When I think about the vertical rotation, then that's when I get these movements. We would rarely do this, to be honest. There's only one posture that we would do this in to any great degree. And what we would do is at that point we would have the leg out, so we preserve some of the integrity of that line. But the point here is that those 4 exercises very much bring our attention to this area: belly, hips, waist, this whole area between, really, let's say the hips, but really the base of the pelvis up to the waist. We could regard as the lower dantian, as the hub, as the control center for the body. So this too becomes a very important point of focus for us. So change is, in a sense, registered here and in our brain, of course, and change is initiated from using that process of intent through the center of the body. One of the old writings on Tai Chi uses the phrase that the mind is like the commander of the army, and the center of your body is like the banner, is the thing that leads the army. Slightly unfortunate imagery, I know, but it does actually work. Another way of thinking of this might be if you drive a car and you have a steering wheel, and your intent, your mind is to turn left, and you turn the steering wheel left. So another way of thinking of it. Now, have 1 foot forwards and just transferring your weight. So here, you want to think about your posture. Don't stand with your feet too close together, because although you can do it, it's quite difficult to get that sense of drop in of letting go. And the length of your step should have enough space there. Because if I bring my feet in line, I'm a bit wobbly, but you can see that there is space between my heel and my toes. There. And so now I have a stance. It's not a huge step. I don't want to have to struggle for the weight. I want a smooth transition of my weight, the majority of my weight, from one leg to another. So if you can imagine straddling one of these big balls that you get in gyms like this, and you're just rolling it to and fro, or if you ride a bike, sometimes you sit on the bike and you're waiting for something and you just move forwards and backwards and the whole bike moves. The advantage of the ball-like image is because that once again gives us this idea of a rotation towards the middle of the body, this time extending down to the ground very much. And so once again, we could imagine that this movement is about us intending to roll the ball forwards and then roll the ball backwards. There are other ways of looking at this as well. I've sometimes talked about the springiness in the legs and so on. No one way that I could describe what's going on would be complete. So, you know, these different images shows different aspects of the movement. But again, as you get more experience in these arts, gradually a different type of image that I think of as memory really begins to build. A memory of how it feels, how it can feel. And so in a way, as we get more experience, the intent, the instruction that the commander gives to the banner, or that the driver is following directions, become much simpler, rather than a complex, oh, we've got to think about the springiness of the leg, the alignment of the body, moving through water and so on and so forth. It's just do this exercise. If you do it enough, then you'll know how you want it to feel, and you'll know when it doesn't feel like that, and so on and so forth. That can only come with practice. So remember, you're getting about 60% of your weight in the front leg. Notice my knee, it hasn't overextended. A certain amount of the movement is still that dropping down in the hips. When I go into my back leg once again, my knee hasn't overextended. And notice that the front knee is still a little bit bent. So I don't do this, locking the knee back, or this. You can see very clearly if I pull the back knee back, and again, let me do that here. Here, the knee is soft. If I pull the knee back, look what happens. I'm already beginning to angle forwards. Settle into your back foot, raise the front toes. You can turn the front foot out a little bit if it helps. Settle into the front foot, raise your back heel. And this should just allow a slight shift further into the leg. So here, I'm not quite fully over the leg. Again, here, see here, there, I get to about there. You see, you can't see. You can see where the pole is. It's roughly above my ankle. As I raise the back heel, see how it moves a little bit until it's just behind the ball of the foot. Likewise here, the pole is just above my toes. Actually, hasn't quite reached my toes. And then here I go back, and it's much more in line. It's not completely accurate because the pole should be going through the middle of my body, but clearly it's not. But the point is that simply raising your toes, letting your back knee bend in to pull your heel up. Both times hips drop, or as we do that, actually gives us a little bit more certainty in the weight settling down, and then we can begin to step in. So as you raise your toes, it's this area that was rotating that you want to feel is dropping down into the foot, and then you step. If you've ever played golf or ever played on a bagatelle, where these machines where you pile marbles around, something similar to that, it's a similar sort of feeling. You line up over the hole and just allow yourself to drop. You don't want to overshoot, but it's no good if you don't go far enough. Oops, I went too far at that time. So try that on the other side. So 70% into the back leg, 60% into the front leg. Again, we develop a sense of intuition about when we've gone far enough. And that's when we begin to raise toes and heel, and go a little bit further, but preserving that feeling of alignment within the body. This is very important. And once again, nothing is static. This inner landscape of the body is constantly changing in small ways, in big ways. And we learn to move with that, just stepping in. So the awareness that we build enables us to see those changes, to work creatively with them. And then take a few steps through. And then going back. So eventually these three treasures, that it might not be a very good image actually, because it implies a kind of fixed thing. None of these three elements are fixed. Mind changes, body changes, energy changes. And in part they change because of the way they interact with each other. Shake out. Tai Chi is described by one sadly departed famous Tai Chi teacher as the martial art of change. And part of it is always going to be awareness. How do we move with time without just getting pushed around by it? And I think this is again something that develops over a period of time in Tai Chi. Now have your right foot forwards. So just moving your weight forwards and back with your hands hanging down from your shoulders. So here, my fingers point down at my ankle. Here, my fingers point down at my rear ankle. Elbows just pushed out slightly. And go forwards, turn your hands so the palms of your hands are facing back, and then rotate them as you go back. Bird folds its wings. Again, observing the movement. A part of your intention is always an observer. What is going on? Where do you feel the movement, the flow, the energy? Which areas would you like to build on? Which areas would you like to maybe sort of bring about a change in. Now this time, you leave your hands facing back. Imagine doing this in water. So once again, like with the exercise we did earlier, there's a slight delay until your arms come through. And again, elbows, wrists, and your fingers nice and soft, yielding gently to the resistance of the water. Once again, we're programming our body to move in a certain way. Anybody who's had the experience of, I don't know, just simply rearranging a room in their house, and maybe putting the chairs somewhere else, will understand how much our mind programs our body. Because you walk into the room after you've done it, and you turn to go and sit in your chair, and you realize the chair's a table and the chair's now somewhere else. But your body was programmed to move in a particular way, following the intent that you wanted to sit down. And then bringing your hands in onto your hips, elbows out slightly, pushing a wave. Once again, as with circling palms, rather than thinking you're going to lift your hands, or even that you have to strain with your arms to push them away, keep the shape of your arm and just feel how the movement of your weight moves your arms forwards and backwards. Soften your shoulders so that the natural response of your body is simply to swing out and up. These last three movements, all of the movements required facing forwards. We're going to change that now. Leave your front hand, your right hand behind, move back, let the left hand drop down and just turn towards your left. Let the hand swing up to your shoulder and go forwards. Turn your body so the hands are pushed and pulled through. Turn a little bit to your right and then sink back. Turn into your left as you come back. Turning towards the foot. So your back foot is turned out, that's the direction you would turn. And likewise, you turn a little bit more towards the foot. This is repulsing the monkey. And again, we can feel how the turning in the movement moves our arms, but also you might find that there is now an overlap between the transfer of your weight and the turning in your center. You might want to think of, once again, that push from the back foot, or rather than pushing from the leg, you might just think, well, if I turn horizontally in the center of my body, then it combines with our intent to move the weight for us. Once again, there's elements of all of those things in the movement. Okay, and shake out. The different movements from this one where I just had you holding your hands in place to this one, which appears a lot more complicated, are all driven by this combination of mind and center. So mind in terms of the intent And that's obviously going to be related, at least in part, to the brain and the nervous system, and center referring to the center of the body. And those are always the things that govern both change and our response to change. So now have your left foot forwards. So once again, your hands just at your sides a few times. Just maintaining a position for your arms and your hands. It's never the case that the arms are irrelevant. They're always a part of that intent, but it's about how we build. So here, you've got that movement. You can think of it as the rolling of the ball, the pushing of the legs, maybe getting a little bit beyond that where you feel both of those going on, but it's just down to an intent to transfer. But add to that an intent to maintain your arms in this position. And then add in the intent to rotate in your shoulders, feeling what's happening in your chest and your upper back. And then changing fisherman castanet. Here the arms, just as the momentum builds up, begin to move a little bit further. Or we may want to just very gently recognize what elements are moving the arms for us and build those up as well. And then pushing a wave. So one of the great benefits, I think, of working like this in Tai Chi is just to benefit the deep calmness that it brings to the mind. And if you think back to the start of the session, maybe maybe a bit kind of not quite there. Hopefully by now, feeling far more settled. And then repulsing the monkey. The chest opens and then closes. And opens and closes. So you're moving through water. One more time. And shake out. Just rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. Your arm. Your back. This is a good way of bringing your attention into your body. It's also very good for the body. but it is a good way of grounding yourself, just reminding yourself that you've got a body. Two good reasons to do this in the morning, I think, as a help to your kind of like waking up practice. Legs. Light on your belly. The upper part. Before we finish, just something that's just been arranged is that I'm going to be running a sort of Tai Chi day retreat on the 25th of June from 10 till 4. And that's going to be out in Reach near Burwell in the village hall there. So if you're interested, I'll be putting details out anyway, but if you are interested and you feel like want more information, drop me an email and I'll happily get back to you. So now coming back to the basic standing posture, embrace tiger, return to mountain. It's all very well to feel that sense of deep calm when you just finished a Tai Chi session and it's all very nice. But I remember something said in one of the very earliest books, or the first book I ever read on Tai Chi, where one of the writers said, so I spend all this time practicing and I feel great and at one with the world and so on and so forth. I go outside, get on a bus and end up having an argument with the conductor over something stupid. I'm paraphrasing, but we've all kind of experienced that. But think about how we got to that point of calmness. It's basically an awareness of our body, of the movement, the change, the different elements involved in that change. So sinking down, embrace tiger, return to the mountain. The tiger, I think of as just daily life, all the things that get thrown over. The mountain for me is this lovely image of stillness, strength, quietness, and calmness. And as we push up away from the mountain, we feel our arms getting heavier, movement slows down, and eventually the arms wrap around. We feel the pull downwards, the hips, shoulders, and elbows, and we just get drawn back to the mountain. So we don't want to feel that we have to sort of strain to find that calmness. It's a contradiction. But simply bringing your attention gently into your body, being aware of the factors, both internal and external, that are working on it, carries within it a process that means that really every few moments you can simply touch base. You can, you know, in the middle of the argument with the conductor of the bus, maybe you can just find that space to think, why am I bothering? Is this important? Nice and gently. It could be your breathing. The breathing pattern for this one is very straightforward if you're interested in it. It's an in-breath, an out-breath as you wrap your arms around, in-breath, and an out-breath. So the settling comes on the out-breath. It could be as simple as just taking a couple of slow, gentle breaths with an awareness of how that can draw your attention in. Doesn't even have to be restricted to either in-breath or out-breath. A couple more times. And stand. Shake out. Lovely. Thank you very much, both of you. And anybody watching on